The smell of rosemary and slow-cooked beef filled the dining room rich and warm, the kind of scent that used to mean family comfort and safety. But that night, nothing felt safe. I sat across from my son Troy and his wife Vanessa at their long mahogany table, polished so bright it reflected the chandelier like a pool of gold. It was our first dinner together in 4 years. I had prayed for this moment, prayed that time had softened whatever bitterness had turned my only child into a stranger. Vanessa smiled with the poise of a woman who always knew how she looked. "You have to try the Cabernet, Mrs. Jefferson," she said smoothly, refilling my glass before I could answer. "Troy picked it just for you." Troy laughed that same low laugh he used to give when he wanted something. "Mama, I told Vanessa you've always had good taste." His voice sounded warm, but the warmth felt rehearsed, practiced, like a sermon memorized for show. I lifted the glass, pretending calm. The wine shimmered a deep red, catching the light like blood under crystal. My hand trembled slightly. Maybe from age, maybe from instinct. I took a sip, polite and careful, the sweetness stronger than I expected. The clock on the wall ticked once twice too loud for the silence that followed. Then my phone buzzed beside my plate. One short vibration, sharp as a whisper. I reached for it, thinking maybe it was May Bell checking on me, but the number was unknown. The message glowed across the screen in cold black letters. "Get up and go now. Don't say anything to your son." My throat tightened. I looked up. Troy was watching me fork, paused halfway to his mouth. "You okay, Mama? You look pale." Vanessa's smile froze in place, her eyes flickering toward my phone. I swallowed hard, forcing a smile. "Just something from church," I said, slipping the phone face down under my napkin. My pulse thundered in my ears. Every muscle in my body wanted to run, but my voice came out calm. "Mind if I use your restroom, baby?" Troy nodded, still smiling, but suspicion edged his gaze. As I rose from my chair, the chandelier light blurred, and the room seemed to spin. The taste of that sweet wine lingered on my tongue, suddenly heavy with something bitter, like truth just before it breaks. The week before that dinner, my life had been simple, quiet, and small, the way most widowed lives eventually become. My house sat at the end of Jefferson Street in Montgomery, a one-story clapboard home, painted the same butter yellow my late husband Raymond always said made the mornings look hopeful. It had been 6 years since he passed, and though time softened the grief, it never erased the empty chair across the kitchen table. Every evening, I made the same modest supper black-eyed peas, greens, cornbread, and set aside a second plate I never touched. Old habits die slower than people. The clock ticked steady, the refrigerator hummed, and sometimes when the night wind slid through the porch screens, I could almost imagine Raymond's voice joining the sound, the deep baritone he used to sing in our church choir, the voice that filled rooms and hearts alike. After supper, I'd sit at the upright piano he bought for my 50th birthday. The keys were worn smooth, a few slightly yellowed from years of gospel hymns and children's lessons. I taught piano to the neighborhood kids twice a week, mostly to keep myself useful and to fill the house with laughter again. "Music keeps us honest," Raymond used to say. "A lie can't hold a note." I believed him, but when it came to my son, honesty had turned into a wound I didn't know how to close. The last time I saw Troy, he'd left my front porch shouting about opportunity and respect. He wanted me to sign papers to invest in some real estate project in Nashville. I'd told him no, that my savings were for security, not speculation. He'd called me selfish, accused me of not believing in him. That word selfish stung worse than any slap could have. After that, silence grew between us like vines. No calls on holidays, no cards, not even on my birthday. I watched his life from the edges of Facebook photos, new suits, fancy dinners, a woman beside him whose smile looked rehearsed, even in pictures. Some nights I scrolled through those photos until my vision blurred, then closed my eyes and whispered to Raymond's portrait on the wall. "He's lost Ray. Our boy's lost." On Sundays, I still attended the same Baptist church where we met 40 years ago. I sang in the choir, though my voice cracked more than it used to. The congregation had thinned old age, and hard times had seen to that, but the sanctuary still carried that smell of wood polish and candle wax that always felt like home. I prayed every morning and every night, asking the same thing: "Lord, if there's still good left in my son, let me see it before my time's done." That prayer was the only hope I hadn't buried beside Raymond. Still, there were moments when I'd catch myself humming old hymns just to keep from crying. His Eye is on the Sparrow was my favorite, the one I'd sung at Raymond's funeral when my hands shook so badly I couldn't play. It wasn't courage that made me sing, it was fear that if I didn't, I'd never find my voice again. That week, I found myself polishing the same photo frame over and over, the one with all three of us, me, Raymond, and a teenage Troy in his graduation robe. His smile had been pure back then, untouched by greed or pride. I touched the glass and whispered, "Come home, baby. Just come home." The phone on the wall hadn't rung in months. The sound startled me when it finally did, an old high-pitched trill cutting through the stillness like a blade. I dropped the dish towel, heart pounding, staring at the caller ID glowing faintly in the dim kitchen light. Troy Jefferson. For a long moment, I couldn't breathe. My hands shook as I lifted the receiver, afraid that silence might return if I hesitated too long. "Hello?" My voice came out low, raw. On the other end, a pause, then a breath, shaky, uncertain, almost boyish. "Mama." Just one word, and everything I'd been holding together for years started to tremble. I closed my eyes, pressing the phone tighter to my ear. "I'm here, son," I said softly. "I'm right here." The next afternoon, the sky hung low and gray, swollen with the promise of summer rain. I sat by the window, shelling peas into a chipped white bowl when the phone rang again. My heart leapt before I even saw the name Troy Jefferson. I wiped my hands on my apron, trying to steady the tremor in my fingers, and answered. "Mama." His voice said softer this time, careful, like he was walking barefoot on broken glass. "I've been thinking about you, about everything." Those words alone nearly broke me. "You been thinking about your mama after all this time." I tried to sound light, but it came out brittle. "I have," he said quickly. "Vanessa's been saying we can't keep living like this, carrying all that bad blood. We want to fix it, Mama. We want to make things right." I could almost hear him rehearsing each sentence, polished, measured. "We're having a small dinner tomorrow night. Just family. You, me, and Vanessa. She's cooking that pot roast you always used to make." The mention of pot roast, the one dish that once brought our house together, cut straight through my defenses. "You sure about that, baby?" I asked quietly. "You remember the last time we tried to have dinner, things didn't end so pretty." He laughed, too fast, too thin. "That's exactly why we need this, Mama. We wasted too much time already." I hesitated. My instincts pressed against my ribs like a warning. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe the son I raised was still in there somewhere behind the rehearsed charm and restless ambition. "All right," I said finally, my voice trembling. "I'll come." "Good," he said, relief spilling through the line. "We moved since last time, 247 Elmwood Drive in the Montclair neighborhood. I'll text you the address." Montclair. I'd heard of it. High gates, perfect lawns, houses so large they made the street lamps look small. It didn't fit the boy who once couldn't hold on to a checking account. "That's a nice part of town," I said slowly. "The Lord's been good," he replied, and the line went quiet for a second too long. When I hung up, I sat staring at the silent phone, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound in the room. The bowl of peas sat forgotten. Something inside me twisted between hope and dread. I walked into my bedroom and opened the cedar chest at the foot of the bed. The faint scent of mothballs rose like a ghost. Inside lay the things I'd kept of Raymond, his pressed navy suit jacket folded neatly, and the white silk scarf he wore every Easter. I pulled them out carefully, smoothing the fabric with my hands. I laid the jacket across the bed and whispered, "He wants to see me, Ray. Says he wants peace." The photo of Raymond on the dresser caught a sliver of the late afternoon light, and for a moment it felt like his eyes were watching me, calm and steady as always. I pressed a palm to the frame. If this is the Lord's way of bringing us back together, then let it be so. But if it's something else, let me see the truth before it's too late. Outside, thunder rolled over the rooftops, distant but steady. I packed a small overnight bag just in case. A change of clothes, my Bible, and the old pearl earrings Raymond had given me the year Troy was born. I slipped them into my pocket, kissed his photo, and whispered the prayer I'd said every night for years, "Lord, keep me safe if my love for my child ever blinds me." When the rain began to fall, it tapped against the window like an old hymn keeping time with my heartbeat. Tomorrow, I told myself, might be a new beginning or the ending I'd never expected. The next day dawned hot and damp, the kind of southern heat that made the air feel thick enough to drink. I wore my Sunday best, a cream dress with a blue floral print. My good shoes and a straw hat, Raymond always said, made me look like sunshine trying to behave. The house smelled faintly of lavender from the sachets I kept in the dresser. I locked the front door, turning the key slowly, as if sealing away the quiet life that had protected me all these years. The Uber driver arrived 5 minutes early, a woman in her early 60s with a soft, round face and graying curls tucked beneath a church hat. She leaned out the window and smiled. "You Miss Claudine Jefferson." "That's me," I said, clutching my purse. "Well, bless my soul, I knew it. I'm May Bell Johnson. Used to see you at New Harmony Baptist when my sister sang in the choir. I always admired how you played that piano like it was praying for you." I laughed, tension easing a little. "That piano been praying for me a long time." She chuckled. "Ain't that the truth?" "Where we headed, Miss Claudine?" "Nashville," I answered, giving her the address Troy had texted. "My son lives there now." "That's a drive," she said, adjusting the air conditioning. "You visiting for long?" "Just dinner, I think," I replied. "It's been a while since we sat down together." May Bell gave me a look through the rearview mirror that mothers recognize, the kind that sees more than words say. Sometimes grown kids don't come home till they got something to fix or something to ask." I smiled faintly. "I'm hoping it's the first one." We drove through the heart of Alabama, past open fields and worn barns that leaned with time. The radio hummed softly old gospel songs, the kind that lived in your bones. "Walk with Me." Lord came on, and without meaning to, I sang along, my voice low and cracked. May Bell joined in her harmony sweet as honey. For a few minutes, the miles between hope and worry didn't matter. But as the car rolled north, the scenery began to change. The small towns disappeared, replaced by wide highways lined with glass towers and billboards promising luxury condos. The houses grew larger, the lawns manicured, the fences taller. My chest tightened. "Your boy must be doing well," May Bell said gently, noticing my silence. "Montclair, huh? That's a fine part of Nashville." I looked out the window, my reflection ghosted against the moving world. "That's what worries me," I said. She gave a soft hum of understanding. "Sometimes blessings come too easy to be honest." Her words hung in the air like prophecy. When we reached the gated community, even the trees seemed expensive. Trimmed, symmetrical, soulless. A uniformed guard checked May Bell's ID before opening the gate with a polite nod. The car rolled slowly down a curved driveway bordered by hedges taller than men. At the end stood a house that could have fit 3 of mine inside it, all marble pillars and high windows that gleamed like eyes. A white BMW and a silver Mercedes sat in the drive, shining like trophies. "Well," May Bell murmured, pulling to a stop, "looks like your son's done found himself a different kind of life." I opened my purse to pay her, but she waved me off. "No, ma'am, this one's on me. And Miss Claudine." I paused with my hand on the door. "Yes, baby. If something don't feel right in there, you trust your spirit first, not your eyes." I looked at her, and for the briefest moment, the world felt still, like the air was waiting to see what choice I'd make. I nodded slowly. "I'll remember that." As I stepped out, the scent of expensive roses filled the air, almost too sweet. The front door swung open before I reached it. Vanessa stood there in silk and pearls, her smile as bright as the afternoon sun and just as blinding. Vanessa's perfume met me before her words did, sweet, heavy, expensive, the kind that clung to your clothes long after you'd left. She stood in the doorway like a magazine photograph, her skin flawless, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. "Claudine," she exclaimed, spreading her arms as though we'd been friends for years instead of strangers separated by silence. "You look divine. Troy's going to be so happy to see you." Her voice was sugar on marble smooth, but without warmth. The foyer behind her glittered with crystal light and polished floors, the air humming faintly with the scent of lilies and money. I hesitated, the weight of my small purse suddenly heavy against my side. "Thank you, baby," I said carefully. "This sure is a beautiful place." Oh, we've been so blessed, Vanessa replied, stepping aside. Please come in. Let me take your bag. I held it closer without thinking. That's all right, sugar. I'll keep it with me. Her eyes flickered just for a moment, but her smile didn't break. Of course, she said lightly. Whatever makes you comfortable. The house was too quiet for its size, the kind of silence that felt rehearsed, as if the walls had been told to hold their breath. Everything gleamed: marble floors, glass vases, gold-framed art I suspected Troy couldn't name. I could see my reflection in the black lacquer of the grand piano sitting unused in the corner. My old piano had scars on its keys from years of Sunday choir songs. This one looked like it had never known music at all. Then I heard him. Mama Troy's voice echoed from the hallway, deeper now, but still carrying that rhythm I remembered from when he used to practice speeches for school. He stepped out, looking every bit the success story-tailored suit, gold watch shoes polished enough to blind a man, but the warmth I wanted wasn't in his eyes. He smiled wide and practiced. Mama, you look incredible. You look younger than ever. He hugged me tight, but the grip didn't feel like love. It felt like performance. I hugged him back anyway. Lord, it's good to see you, baby. It's good to see you too, he said, quickly pulling back. Vanessa's been working all day on dinner. You'll love it. Come on, let's sit. As we walked into the dining room, I noticed the table set for 3. China plates with gold rims, crystal glasses that caught the chandelier light silver so polished it looked liquid. A vase of roses stood in the center, their scent overwhelming. I sat where Vanessa guided me, my back to the window. Troy poured wine into my glass without asking. Cabernet Mama. It's smooth. You'll like it. He poured for himself and Vanessa too, but I noticed her glass stayed mostly untouched. You sure are living fancy these days, I said, trying to sound teasing. The Lord's blessed you real good. Vanessa laughed softly. We've been fortunate. Troy's business is finally paying off. Real estate's booming, you know. That so? I asked, watching her eyes. She held my gaze too long, her smile stiff. Yes, she said. God's timing is always perfect. The scent of food drifted from the kitchen, warm and familiar. Vanessa clapped her hands once. Maria, she called, but the woman who stepped out wasn't named Maria. It was Maybelle. Dressed in black and white, her hair tied back, she carried a tray of appetizers. My breath caught, surprise locking in my throat. She didn't look at me directly, just gave the faintest nod, her eyes flicking down, once warning. This is Miss Maybelle, Vanessa said brightly. She helps us around the house. Couldn't manage without her. I forced a smile. You've got good help. When Maybelle set the tray down, her hand brushed mine lightly. A pulse of understanding passed between us unspoken. Something was wrong. Vanessa brought out the main dish herself, pot roast perfectly browned with rosemary sprigs laid like decoration. I heard this was your favorite, she said, placing a slice on my plate. Family recipes should stay in the family, right? Her tone was light, but her eyes were searching. I picked up my fork, my heart thudding softly. The meat looked perfect, tender, glistening with sauce. I took one bite, and the taste hit me with a wave of memory. Sunday dinners, Raymond saying Grace Troy, sneaking extra cornbread. For a moment, I almost smiled. This is good, I said. Real good. How'd you know this was my favorite? Vanessa's smile deepened too quick. Troy remembers everything about his mama. My eyes drifted to him. That? So? I asked softly. He looked down, cutting his food with unnecessary precision. Of course, he said, but there was no conviction behind it. As I chewed slowly, I felt something cold slide beneath my skin, a whisper of doubt that didn't have words yet. The house felt too clean, the dinner too perfect, the warmth too measured. I caught Maybelle's reflection in the mirror across the room. Her hands were trembling as she refilled the water pitcher. When our eyes met, she mouthed something silently, one word. Careful. I smiled at her, faintly nodding once. Vanessa leaned back, satisfied. It feels good, doesn't it, family at the same table again? I looked at the shining table, the expensive plates, the flawless roses. It feels like something I said quietly. I just don't know what yet. Troy chuckled awkwardly, reaching for his wine. Vanessa's hand touched his arm, too fast, too tense. And just then, I realized what I hadn't heard all evening, the sound of laughter that comes from truth. Everything here gleamed, but nothing breathed. And deep down, I knew something holy had been replaced with something hollow. Dinner began the way good performances always do, with warmth that felt borrowed and smiles that came too easily. Vanessa kept up a steady rhythm of charm, pouring wine, complimenting my earrings, telling stories that didn't quite sound true. "You know, Claudine," she said, with that effortless grace of a woman who'd practiced sincerity in the mirror, "Troy tells me you were the strongest woman he's ever known, that you raised him with so much faith and discipline." Her words were silk, but her eyes were steel. I smiled gently, though my gut twisted. "Well, strength's a funny thing, honey. It only shows up when everything else is gone." Across the table, Troy shifted in his seat. "Mama, don't get all philosophical tonight. We're celebrating." He raised his glass. "To new beginnings." The crystal clinked, the sound too sharp for comfort. I took a small sip, the sweetness heavy, almost syrupy. My head felt warm almost instantly, like the air itself was thickening. "So tell me, Troy," I said, setting my glass down, "what kind of business y'all in now?" "Vanessa says real estate." He grinned, but his eyes flicked toward his wife before answering. "Yeah, real estate development. A couple of new projects. Nothing too crazy." Vanessa leaned in. "He's modest. You should see what he's built. And he's learned a lot about managing assets, too. You must be so proud." Something in her tone made me pause. Managing assets. The phrase sat on the table like a sharp knife. "Well, I'm proud when a man keeps his word," I said softly, folding my napkin. "Success ain't about what you own, it's about what you don't have to steal to get there." Vanessa's smile faltered for the briefest second before recovering. "Of course," she said sweetly. "That's why Troy always says he got his sense of integrity from you." May Bell entered quietly, carrying a basket of cornbread. Her movements were steady, but I saw the tremor in her hands. She poured me water, her voice low. "Everything all right, Miss Claudine?" she asked. I nodded, though I didn't mean it. "Just a little warm, baby. Let me open a window." "No." Vanessa interrupted, her voice sharp before smoothing again. "I mean, let's not let the cool air ruin the atmosphere." Her hand reached for the wine bottle, refilling my glass before I could protest. I took another sip to keep from drawing attention. The liquid slid down my throat too easily, leaving behind a strange numbness at the edge of my tongue. So Mama Troy began again, his tone casual, but his eyes too focused. "Have you ever thought about retirement? You've been working so hard all your life. You deserve rest. Maybe. Someone to handle the paperwork, finances, that sort of thing." I looked at him over the rim of my glass. "You mean like a power of attorney?" He blinked. "Well, yeah, just for emergencies. You know, if something ever happened, I could take care of things for you." Vanessa reached across and placed her hand on mine, her fingers cool and precise. "We just want you to feel safe, Claudine. Families should look after each other." Her voice was honey, but her eyes never blinked. My heart thudded against my ribs, a drumbeat of warning. "I appreciate the thought," I said evenly, "but the Lord already looking after me." She smiled wider. "And he sent you us." I laughed softly, not from humor, but from the realization that this dinner wasn't about reconciliation. It was about opportunity. My stomach turned as I watched Troy reach for a leather folder beside his chair. He placed it on the table like a preacher laying down scripture. The gold letters on the front gleamed legal documents. "Mama," he said gently, "I had my lawyer draft something simple just to make sure your house, your accounts, everything you worked for stays in the family. You just need to sign where I marked." The chandelier light flickered slightly, casting quick shadows across the table. I heard my own heartbeat louder than the ticking clock. "You sure you ain't moving too fast, baby?" "Mama," he said, his smile tightening, "this is just practical." Vanessa's tone softened, but it was the kind of softness that bruises. "You said you trusted him, right? This is how families build legacies." I looked between them. The room felt smaller now, the air too thick. The scent of rosemary had turned cloying, like perfume gone stale. I glanced toward the kitchen. Maybelle stood frozen, her eyes wide, lips pressed together as though holding back words. I reached for my purse to get my reading glasses, pretending calm, pretending belief. My fingers brushed my phone and the screen lit up. I froze when I saw the message unknown number 1 line glowing back at me in bold letters, "Get up and go." Don't say anything to your son. My breath caught. Mama Troy asked, his voice slightly edged. Everything okay? I forced a smile, sliding the phone under my napkin. Just my choir director, I lied. She's checking if I'm still alive. Vanessa laughed lightly, but the tension in her jaw betrayed her. You do look a little pale, she said. Maybe some fresh air. No, Troy interrupted quickly. She's fine. Just finish your wine, Mama. He leaned forward, his tone soft, almost tender. I just need your signature, that's all. Then we can start over. I looked at the papers at the line marked Claudine Jefferson, waiting like a grave for my name. My eyes flicked to the reflection in the mirror, May Bell gripping the counter, shaking her head ever so slightly. I straightened my back, forcing calm into my voice. Well, I said slowly, I believe I will freshen up before I sign anything. My hand's been shaky lately. Vanessa's eyes darted toward Troy. Of course, she said. Second door on the left down the hall. I stood my chair, sliding quietly over the marble floor. The air seemed colder now, though the room hadn't changed. My pulse beat steady and fast. As I turned toward the hallway, I saw May Bell move toward the sink, her hands trembling harder than before. The smile stayed on my lips until I was out of sight. Then it fell, replaced by fear and the taste of something bitter rising in the back of my throat. The hallway stretched out in front of me, long and quiet, lined with portraits I didn't recognize: Troy in tailored suits, Vanessa at charity galas, smiles frozen in gold frames. The air smelled faintly of polish and perfume, but underneath was something sour metallic like fear. My heels clicked against the marble, each sound too loud in the silence. My fingers itched to pull out my phone again to make sure I'd really seen those words. I stopped at the mirror near the end of the hall. My reflection looked pale, the lipstick I'd put on that afternoon now a faded trace. I'd aged 10 years in one dinner. My throat was dry, my hands trembling slightly. I slipped my phone from under my napkin and checked the screen again. The text was still there, bold, unrelenting. Get up and go. Don't say anything to your son. The number was unknown. No name, no context. But something deep in my bones, the same instinct that made me wake up the night Raymond passed before the phone even rang, told me it was real. I scrolled up looking for anything else. Just that one message. I typed back before I could overthink it. Who is this? 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. My heart stuttered. Another message came through. The wine isn't safe. Say you need air. Leave now. A cold sweat broke across my back. I looked down the hallway toward the dining room. I could hear Troy's low voice. Vanessa's soft laughter, the sound of control disguised as comfort. My pulse pounded in my ears. I didn't know if I was dizzy from fear or from whatever they'd put in that wine. I turned, pretending to look for the restroom, but my feet carried me toward the kitchen instead. The door was half open, the light spilling across the tile floor. Inside, May Bell stood at the sink, washing crystal glasses that sparkled too bright under the overhead light. She didn't turn when I stepped in. May Bell, I whispered, did you send that text? Her shoulders tensed. For a moment, she didn't move, the sound of water filling the silence. Then, without turning around, she said softly, Yes, ma'am, I did. My breath caught. What's in the wine? Something that don't belong there, she said, her voice trembling. I saw her pour it. Said it was a supplement, just for nerves. But I know what medicine looks like and what poison smells like. You need to go now, Miss Claudine. Don't make a scene. My chest tightened. Lord have mercy, I whispered. My own boy. She finally turned eyes wet but steady. He don't know what she's doing to him neither, but she's got him wrapped so tight he can't tell right from wrong anymore. You still got time, but not much. A noise from the dining room made us both flinch, a chair scraping a low murmur. May Bell pressed a napkin into my hand. Inside it was my house key and a small folded paper with numbers scribbled across it. Go out the back, she said. You'll find a gate to the left. I'll call you when it's safe. May Bell, I said, tears rising, you're risking your job and maybe more. Some things worth losing a job over, she said simply. Now go. I slipped through this kitchen door into the humid night, the scent of roses heavy in the air. My heart hammered as I crossed the manicured lawn shoes, sinking into the soft grass. Every step felt like a prayer. I didn't look back. The house behind me glowed like a lie dressed in gold. When I reached the garden gate, I pulled out my phone. One more message blinked on the screen. Uber's on its way. Don't go home yet. I didn't know who was protecting me, but I knew one thing for certain. Grace had sent its warning, and I wasn't about to ignore it. The night air hit me like a blessing and a warning all at once, thick with humidity, heavy with the scent of roses that suddenly smelled more like deceit than beauty. My breath came short and shallow. I could still hear faint laughter from inside the house. Vanessa's honeyed tone drifting through the open kitchen window, smooth and poisonous. My legs trembled as I moved down the path, the gravel crunching softly under my shoes. I didn't dare look back. The back gate loomed ahead tall and iron-wrought, its latch glinting under the porch lights. I reached for it, but my fingers were shaking too hard to find the lock. The phone in my hand vibrated again, one single buzz. I glanced down. A new message. Keep walking. The driver's close. You're safe for now. My chest tightened. Safe for now. Those words didn't comfort me. They just reminded me how close I'd come to never being safe again. I pushed the gate open, the hinges creaking softly like an old hymn, and stepped out onto the quiet suburban street beyond. Every house here looked the same, white columns, manicured lawns, and windows that glowed with the soft deceit of wealth. Behind those walls, no one would have believed a story like mine. A mother poisoned by her own child, they'd call it melodrama, not attempted murder. The cool air touched my face, grounding me. Somewhere down the block an engine idled. I followed the sound, my pulse quick and unsteady. I clutched my purse tight to my chest, feeling the hard outline of my Bible inside the one thing I'd brought that still felt real. When I reached the corner, a black sedan slowed to a stop beside me. The window rolled down, and the driver leaned out, a young man with soft eyes and gospel music playing faintly from the radio. "Miss Claudine?" he asked. I nodded, unable to speak. He jumped out, hurried around to open the door. "You okay, ma'am? You look like you seen a ghost." I managed a weak smile. "Maybe I have baby. Maybe I have." He helped me inside, and the moment the car doors closed, I let out the breath I'd been holding. My hands wouldn't stop trembling. I looked back through the tinted window. The mansion sat there in perfect stillness, every light glowing warm and welcoming like a postcard version of family. Nothing about it betrayed the truth that inside my own son had poured me a glass of death and called it love. The driver glanced at me through the mirror. "Everything all right, ma'am? You need a hospital." "No," I said quickly. "Just take me to the nearest gas station, somewhere with lights, somewhere public." He nodded and pulled away from the curb. The car rolled past manicured lawns, the hum of the tires steady as my heartbeat began to slow. I stared out the window, watching the world blur by in streaks of gold and shadow. The weight of betrayal sat heavy in my chest, thicker than fear. When we reached the gas station, I thanked the driver and stepped out under the harsh white lights. The world here smelled like gasoline and fried food, honest smells, grounded smells. I leaned against the wall, catching my breath when my phone buzzed again. A new message. "Don't go home. They'll look for you there. Wait 10 minutes. I'll call." I typed back quickly, my thumbs stiff. "Who are you?" The reply came fast. "Someone who couldn't stand by and let them hurt you." I froze. My heart pounded harder. Before I could respond, the phone rang. The screen showed the same unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. The voice on the other end was quiet, careful, and unmistakably female. "Miss Claudine." "Yes," I whispered. "Who is this?" "You don't need to know my name yet. What matters is you're alive. They were going to make sure you weren't." The world tilted again. "Dear Lord," I whispered. "My own child." "Your son's desperate," the voice said. "But his wife, she's the one who planned it. She put something in your wine." I heard everything. My knees buckled. I pressed a hand to the wall for balance. "How do you know all this?" "I work there," she said softly, and I couldn't watch it happen. May Bell. I breathed realization hitting like thunder. Silence on the line for a beat. Then, quietly, "Yes, ma'am." The truth spread through me slow and cold. My son had tried to destroy me, and a stranger, no, a friend, had saved my life. Miss Claudine May Bell said gently, "You need to call the police. You need to tell them everything. I got proof, pictures, recordings. But we don't have much time." The lights of the gas station flickered above me, humming faintly. My reflection in the glass door looked unfamiliar, older, wiser, harder. "I'll make the call," I said finally. But not just for me. For every mama who ever trusted the wrong child. I ducked into the gas station's small diner section, the kind with faded red booths and a coffee pot that never stopped brewing. The hum of the refrigerator and the low chatter of a country radio station grounded me just enough to breathe again. I took a seat by the window, gripping my phone like it was the only real thing left in the world. Matey. Belle, I whispered. You said you got proof. Her voice came through low, steady, despite the fear I could hear beneath it. Yes, ma'am. I've been hearing them for days talking about papers and signatures. She planned everything, Vanessa. She said once you signed, she'd file the transfer and move the money to a shell account. Troy don't even know the full story. He think it's just a loan. I felt the words cut through me like ice, and he believed her, I asked quietly. He believed that woman over his own mama. Ma'am, she said gently. He don't believe in nothing right now but fear. They owe money, big money, to bad people. Vanessa said the debt was due tomorrow, 2-point-something million. The number rang in my ears like a bell toll. I closed my eyes, my pulse thudding slow and painful. Lord, I whispered, have mercy on my child, but don't let his sin take me down with him. I got pictures, May Bell continued. I took 'em when they left the study open. The papers are ready for you to sign power of attorney house deed your savings account, even your pension. I got audio, too. Her talking on the phone with a man named Dorsey, he's the one they owe. Said if she don't get your signature tonight, he's sending somebody to collect in a way she won't forget. I pressed my hand over my mouth, fighting the urge to cry. It wasn't the loss of money that hurt. It was the realization that my son, the boy I'd raised to sing gospel in church and help his neighbors, had walked himself so far into sin he couldn't find the way out. What do I do now? I asked, my voice barely a breath. You call the police, Miss Claudine, May Bell said firmly. You call them and you tell them everything. I'll send what I got right now. A second later, my phone buzzed with a flood of images, legal documents, voice memos, photos of bottles, and one grainy shot of Vanessa pouring something from a clear vial into a wine glass. I stared at it until my eyes blurred. You saved my life, I whispered. No, ma'am, she said softly. You saved mine years ago when you let me sit in that choir every Sunday, even when folks said I didn't have the voice for it. You told me, the Lord don't judge how loud you sing, only how true. I just remembered that tonight. Her words broke something open inside me. The tears came hot and quiet. I hadn't known kindness like that in a long time. Then let's finish this right, I said. I opened my contacts and scrolled to the name I hadn't called in years, Detective Curtis Daniels. He'd been one of my old piano students, now a police investigator. The phone rang twice before he answered, his voice deep and steady. Detective Daniels. Curtis, I said, trying to steady my tone. It's Miss Claudine Jefferson. I need your help, son, and it can't wait. His voice softened instantly. Miss Claudine, you okay? No, baby, but I will be if you listen close. I told him everything, the dinner, the text, the poison, the papers, and May Bell's warning. I sent him every file she'd given me. When I finished, the silence on the other end was heavy with disbelief and anger. Don't you worry, he said finally. We're going to take care of this tonight. You just stay put till I tell you it's safe. Curtis, I said quietly, I ain't never run from truth in my life. If they meant to bury me tonight, I want to face him before the Lord does. Miss Claudine, I'm going back, baby, but I'm not going alone. He sighed, the sound of resignation and respect mixed together. All right, ma'am. We'll be right behind you. I ended the call and looked out the diner window where the streetlights shimmered in the humid air. Somewhere beyond them, my son was waiting to finish what he thought was business. I whispered the words my husband once told me before every hard moment. When the devil sits at your table, make sure you bless the food before you eat. Then I stood, straightened my dress, and headed out into the night. The night wrapped around me like a prayer I wasn't sure God was still hearing. Detective Curtis's cruiser followed from a distance, its headlights dimmed. May Bell's messages came steady as a heartbeat. They're still at the table. She's on the phone again. He looks nervous. Hurry, but careful. My hands gripped my purse so tightly the leather creaked. By the time I reached the driveway, the mansion gleamed under the porch lamps, too bright, too clean, like a lie scrubbed spotless. I drew a deep breath, whispered, Lord, keep my voice calm and my eyes clear, and rang the bell. Vanessa opened the door, her smile brittle. Claudine, she said smoothly, you gave us quite a scare. You just walked out. I needed some air. I replied, my tone soft as silk. This old heart of mine beat slower than it used to. Troy appeared behind her, the collar of his shirt open, his expression strained. Mama, I was about to call. You shouldn't go off like that. I know, baby, I said, but you raised me better than to leave business unfinished. Vanessa blinked uncertain. You mean the papers? That's right. I smiled gently. I think it's time I sign. Her relief came too quickly. Wonderful. Let's sit back down. We moved into the dining room again, the same table, the same untouched plates, the same half-empty wine glasses glinting beneath the chandelier. I lowered myself into my chair with deliberate calm. My phone sat hidden beneath the folded napkin on my lap, the recording already running. Vanessa slid the folder toward me. Everything's right there, she said, her voice syrup-sweet. We'll get it notarized first thing in the morning. I opened the folder, scanning the neat stack of pages that might have cost me my life. My eyes landed on the words, Power of Attorney, printed bold across the top. It's funny, I said lightly, how words can look so innocent when they're fixin' to do harm. Troy frowned. Mama, what are you talking about? About the same thing you should have been talking about before you let this woman poison your blood and your soul. Vanessa stiffened. Excuse me? I met her gaze square. I'm not excusing you, sweetheart. I'm accusing you. Her lips parted ready to deny, but I raised my hand. Don't bother. May Bell saw what you poured, and the police, well, they've been listening to this whole conversation. The color drained from Troy's face. The police? Right on cue, the sound of tires crunched against the gravel outside. Red and blue lights flickered through the front windows like the wrath of heaven itself. Vanessa shot to her feet, knocking over her glass. You stupid old... Watch your tongue, I said sharply. You're in a house built by lies, but my God still hears the truth. Troy turned toward me, his voice cracking. Mama, I didn't know she said it was vitamins, she said. She said a lot of things I cut in, but you didn't ask, did you? You just wanted my name on a line and my money in your pocket. The door burst open. Curtis entered with 2 uniformed officers. Vanessa Jefferson, he said calm and firm, you're under arrest for attempted murder and conspiracy to commit fraud. Her voice broke into shrill disbelief. You can't prove anything. Curtis held up a small recorder. We don't have to. You proved it yourself about 2 minutes ago. The officers moved quickly, cuffing her as she screamed Troy's name. He stood frozen, tears slipping down his face. Mama, he whispered, I didn't mean for it to go this far. I looked at him, the same boy who once brought me dandelions from the yard, who used to fall asleep on my lap after Sunday service. My heart broke and hardened all at once. Intentions don't heal what greed kills, baby. You made your choices. Curtis turned to me, his expression soft. You all right, Miss Claudine? I will be, I said quietly. Just needed to see the truth with my own eyes. As Vanessa was led past me, she hissed, You'll die alone for this. I met her glare without flinching. Maybe, I said. But I'll die clean. The door slammed behind them, and for the first time all night, silence felt holy. The chandelier swayed gently, scattering light across the half-empty table. Troy sank into his chair, face buried in his hands. Curtis approached him. You'll need to come downtown too, son. Troy nodded numbly, his voice breaking. Yes, sir. I rose slowly, my knees stiff but my spirit steady. Curtis, I said, when you're done with him, see that he gets a Bible. Not to read, just to hold. Maybe one day he'll remember what faith felt like. He nodded. Yes, ma'am. As they walked him out, I stood alone in that glittering room, surrounded by evidence of everything false. The air smelled of spilled wine and wilted roses. I whispered a single line from an old hymn, though trials may come, he still guides my feet. And for the first time in years, I knew I was truly free. Morning light filtered through the blinds of the guest house Curtis had arranged for me, cutting the small room into pale gold and soft shadow. The world felt quieter now, though my heart hadn't yet caught up. My phone buzzed with messages, neighbors, church friends, even the pastor all whispering versions of the same question. Is it true I didn't answer any of them? I sat by the window, a cup of coffee growing cold between my palms, watching the dew dry on the grass. The night replayed in fragments the shimmer of Vanessa's smile, the chill in Troy's eyes, the sound of handcuffs snapping like thunder. Every piece of it a different kind of grief. The news had broken fast. Local couple charged in poison plot against elderly mother. The headlines read, Family Greed Leads to Arrests in Montclair Mansion. I didn't need to read the details. I'd lived them. Curtis stopped by around noon, still in his plain clothes, but with exhaustion in his eyes. "They've confessed, Miss Claudine," he said. "Vanessa cut a deal this morning. She's turning over documents and bank records. Looks like she planned to sell your house and withdraw your savings before the month ended." I nodded slowly. "And Troy?" He sighed. "He'll face charges too. Fraud complicity, but—" His voice softened. "We're trying to get him leniency." He admitted what he knew, claimed he didn't think she'd go that far. Said he just wanted to borrow until they could pay it back. I laughed a quiet, tired sound. Borrow. That's what they call stealing when it's from someone who still loves you. Curtis looked at me with the same gentle pity he'd had as a boy when he couldn't quite hit the right piano note. "You're stronger than most folks, Miss Claudine. Most people would have folded under something like that." I turned to the window, my reflection faint against the sunlight. "Strength don't come from choice, baby. It comes from what's left after you run out of tears." He hesitated. "There's one more thing. Maybelle's statement, it was brave what she did. She's quitting her job, moving out of state. Said she couldn't stay after this." I nodded. "She saved me. The Lord used her hands when I didn't have the strength to lift my own." Curtis placed an envelope on the table. "Her address. She asked if you'd write." "I will," I said quietly. Some debts can't be paid with money. After he left the room, felt too still. I opened my Bible, its pages worn soft from years of touch, and read from Proverbs, "Better is a poor man who walks in his integrity than a rich man who is crooked in his ways." The words sank deep, heavy, but clean. That evening, I went back to my house on Jefferson Street. The porch creaked just the same, and the scent of jasmine lingered in the air. Inside, dust motes floated in the sunlight like bits of memory. I set my purse on the counter and let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding since that dinner. The phone rang once before I could sit down. The voice on the other end was hesitant. "Mama," it was Troy. Silence stretched between us like a tightrope. "I'm sorry," he said, finally, the words breaking. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I needed to hear your voice." I closed my eyes, tears welling. "Son," I said softly, "you've been my joy and my sorrow. I can't undo what you did, but I can pray you learn what love really costs." He sobbed quietly. "They're taking me in tomorrow." "I know," I whispered, "and I'll be praying tomorrow too." When we hung up, I stayed still for a long while. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance, soft and low. I thought of Raymond, of Maybelle, of Curtis, of the long road that led me from blindness to truth. Betrayal had taken my peace, but it hadn't taken my faith. I set the empty coffee cup in the sink, the sound small but final. "Let it end, Lord," I said aloud, "but let it end with grace." 2 months later, autumn came to Montgomery with a slow mercy. The air was crisp. The trees outside my house had started to turn amber and rust, and for the first time in years, the wind through the porch screen didn't sound like loneliness. It sounded like forgiveness, trying to find its way home. I'd repainted the front steps, tended to the small garden out back, and moved the old piano from the living room to face the window where the morning light poured in. Each day I played for a little while, nothing fancy, just hymns that carried memory instead of melody. Sometimes I imagined Maybelle humming along, her laughter tucked into the notes like a promise. The town had long since settled into its rhythm again. The papers stopped printing stories about the Montclair Mansion case. Vanessa had been sentenced to 8 years in state prison, her eyes still cold and unapologetic when they led her away. Troy got 3 years and probation afterward, along with counseling. The judge, an old woman with hair white as ash, had looked at me from the bench and said, "Mrs. Jefferson, I wish every victim I saw in this courtroom had your clarity. You didn't just save yourself, you exposed a sickness that hides in too many homes." That day, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt hollow, like the truth had weight but no comfort. Yet when the gavel came down, I realized something that had taken a lifetime to understand. Justice doesn't heal, but it clears the ground, so healing can begin. After the trial, Curtis came to check on me. He stood on my porch, still wearing his badge, but with his jacket folded over one arm. "You holding up okay, Miss Claudine?" "I'm standin'," I said. "And after the year I've had, that's about as good as anyone can ask." He smiled faintly. You planning on going back to church this Sunday? I am, I replied, glancing at the small envelope on the piano May Bell's latest letter from Georgia. I owe the Lord a song or two. He nodded. Then we'll be there to hear it. When he left, I sat at the piano and unfolded May Bell's letter again. Her handwriting leaned soft and careful, the kind that carried grace in every loop. Dear Miss Claudine, they gave me my first day of peace in years. I've been helping at a women's shelter down here teaching kids piano just like you did me. The little ones don't know much about chords yet, but they got rhythm in their hearts. I tell them all about a lady in Montgomery who once said, "A lie can't hold a note." I carry that truth with me every day. You stay safe now and don't let bitterness steal what's left of your song. With love, May Bell. I pressed the letter to my heart, tears falling slow and quiet. There was a time I thought love was something that had to come from blood. Now I knew better. Love was in the courage of strangers, the faith of friends, and the still small voice that said, "Get up and go before it was too late." That Sunday, I dressed in my blue church hat, the one Raymond used to call my hallelujah crown, and walked to New Harmony Baptist under a sky clean and bright. When I stepped into the sanctuary, the choir was already warming up their voices soft and sure. Folks turned to greet me, some with tears, others with smiles. No one mentioned the past, and I was grateful. Some stories don't need retelling once they've found peace. When the pianist nodded for me to join, I sang, "His eye is on the sparrow." My voice cracked on the first verse, but steadied by the second. And when I reached the line, I sing because I'm happy, I sing because I'm free. I finally understood it wasn't just a lyric. It was truth. After service, a little girl no older than 8 tugged at my sleeve. "Miss Jefferson," she said shyly. "Mama says you're the lady who caught the bad people." I smiled, bending down to meet her eyes. "No, baby. The Lord caught 'em. I just opened the door." That night, as the sun slipped behind the magnolia trees, I sat on my porch with a cup of tea and the scent of jasmine curling through the air. Somewhere down the street, wind chimes tinkled softly. I looked toward the heavens, the last light fading into deep gold, and whispered, "Thank you, Lord, for sending a warning when I was too blind to see." The world was quiet except for the hum of crickets and the far-off song of a night train. I thought about Troy, about the day he'd come home again, about what forgiveness might look like when he was ready to seek it. And for the first time since that terrible dinner, I didn't feel anger. I felt peace. Because sometimes the miracle isn't that you survive the betrayal. It's that your heart learns to sing again after the silence.